super excited to be joined by Sophie-Anne Sharples, pre-sales solution architect at IFS currently. Welcome to the stream. How are you?
Thanks. I'm really well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's just been a couple of days since I met you at the ERP summit, which is like it's got AI ERP today, I believe. um, and yeah, I just saw you there, and we sparked up a conversation, and we've actually had a lot of things in common in our career, right? And yeah, I'm just really keen to just dive in and get to know you. So yeah, do you want to tell us about like your background, about yourself, and let's get this going. Let's get this kicked off. What are you passionate about? What are you doing currently? How did you get up to the current role that you're in? So many questions for you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, where to begin? I guess I went to an all-girls school in the north of England, and we had a super inspirational head teacher, Lillian Croston, giving her a little shout out there,
Hello.
who really sort of empowered us to say, you can do whatever you want. Don't let your gender hold you back,
Mhm.
which then led me to studying mechanical engineering at university. So I was over in Hull at uni there, studying mechanical engineering as one of 4 girls to 140 boys, which was interesting, having just come from an all-girls school.
Yep.
But nonetheless, it was kind of one of the best experiences ever, made some lifelong friends there. Then when I graduated, I came and worked for Fort Vale Engineering in the northwest of England,
Yep.
which I did for about 4 years. And
Mhm.
whilst I was there, I had quite a few different roles. I started off working with the maintenance team down on the shop floor, actually setting up a software system for them,
Oh
which
wow.
then ironically loops back around to kind of what I do now.
Mhm.
So I did a couple of roles whilst I was there, moved into the sales team as a technical sales engineer. They were then deciding to change their entire ERP system, selected IFS, and I was a super user for some of the key areas that I now focus on
Mhm.
at IFS as a solution architect. So I did move across about 5.5 years ago, initially in consulting for the first 3 years before then moving into pre-sales in the last 2.5. And then here I am meeting you on a couple of days ago at the ERP Today Summit, talking all things AI.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely crazy. Like how complex those things are. If you even like try and like, I mean, I tried. Like obviously, like I put this in earlier, like going through your LinkedIn and stuff. Um, so you um did engineering, pretty much. Did you study engineering? Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay, so you studied engineering. You actually did a couple of placements whilst. So you had a waitress role, and then you also had a role at Shout UK for mental health, like helping people in mental health. And I think that's one that really stood out for me because I guess things that you do that's breaking out of your mold is one of the things that make you like, right, like the depth of, in my opinion, like the depth of you. So you went there, and then uh sorry, you were doing that, sorry, like as well as um
So Shout was alongside work.
mhm,
Yeah, basically it was supporting, it's still going now. I've stepped back from the role slightly just because of other commitments. It's probably a better question to ask what I don't do rather than what I do. But yeah, at Shout, it's supporting people when they're going through a crisis moment and taking them from that kind of hot-headed area into a cool calm. So that we had loads of tools and things to use to be able to talk someone down from that kind of crisis point that they're really feeling in that moment, and just helping support them and then signpost them if needed to further support.
so I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think that's an interesting role. um
Mhm.
Not discounting the wealth of experience, which we're gonna dive deeper as well in shortly, but is it similar to like suicide hotline, or is just people that could it be anything? Could it be just going through it? And I noticed it was a digital division, so it wasn't, was it it's not exactly telephone, but it's people sending messages. Is that, am I right? Or
Yeah, so they would text the service and then we would reply through a platform, which basically would send text replies. But yeah, it could be absolutely anything. A number of the people that I did speak with, they were in the process of either attempting to or thinking about committing suicide. So talking them through that and, kind of helping to guide them. My role at that level meant that if that was a situation where I actually felt that I wasn't able to de-escalate it, they were intent on doing it, I could call on one of the supervisors and they could then take over if needs be. And if we then also felt that it needed it, we could also inform the emergency services and the Red Cross to come out and help support them in that moment. But yeah, there was a whole host of things. It kind of went from that extreme to the other extreme with maybe younger people who were feeling isolated or lonely, or they were being bullied at school. And again, it's just trying to help them through that moment. Is there, something that they can do to lift their mood even when they're feeling down? Are there coping mechanisms that they can put in place over time so that they don't feel as affected by it? There's all sorts of things we could do.
Sophie, tell me why you were drawn to that role, and you did it for quite a while, like 2.5 years, and I guess you're still in contact, like on hand as well with your skill set. But I'm now curious, if you don't mind sharing, what made you want to do such a role? Because I mean, I've dealt with a lot of things in my life and my background. My life hasn't been easy. Like moving from Philippines to here when I was 13, and still currently going through, like, everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got things in their lives, but to me that's such a big role, alongside your current role. What made you want to do that?
I really enjoy helping people. Like even today, I still volunteer. I just do it in a different way. So Shout was a voluntary role. I wasn't paid for it. I'm a mental health first aider at IFS as well in the UK.
Or-
So I have a general interest in mental health anyway.
Mhm.
When I was at school, I was bullied quite badly. So I guess that it probably
Wait,
stems from that myself.
how were you bullied? What were you like back? I was bullied too, but like, so kindred spirits here. But
Yeah.
I think everybody, at some sense, don't want to be bullied. It's kind of like that kind of thing when you're younger.
Yeah.
That's the one of the number one things you face. But talk to me about that. Why were you like? Could you want to even?
Yeah. I think it probably stems back to like kids are mean. Kids,
Okay.
kids are mean. I don't think when you're that age you really realize the magnitude of your words and what you're saying and how they can affect someone else.
Mhm.
It's actually funny because one of the girls who bullied me at school, we ended up going to university together, and actually ended up becoming really close. And I remember after one evening out when we'd had a few too many snake bites,
Mhm.
she came over to me crying, started apologizing, and was, saying how she realized how kind of awful she'd been at school. But
So,
by this point, I was so over it. We'd moved past it. It wasn't really an issue anymore.
so out of nowhere, she was just like, um, "I love snake bites, by the way." Makes me want to drink.
I don't anymore. I had too many in a hole.
Uh, no, but talk to, did that just happen out of the blue, or was it prompted by you telling her that you didn't like that before, or did she just come
Um,
out of the blue realizing
I
it?
remember it was about 10 years ago now that we had that conversation, but
Hmm.
um, I remember after she apologized, I remember saying to her, like, I could take it. I'm a strong enough person that it was fine. But the way that the girls were, a weaker person, it might have had a different outcome, who maybe didn't have as good of support system as I did. So it was just your classic like name calling, just in the corridors, like even the older years, I don't know, they just take the mick out of me for nothing. And I didn't really understand what I'd done to deserve it. Maybe I was just easy pickings because, I was a nice person. And I guess maybe I'd fought back a little bit. And so they got a rise out of me. So maybe that was why. I don't know.
Hmm. See, it's funny though, because usually that's a prime driver for you wanting to excel in your career and in your life. Like, it's not, well, not just the bullies, but just these things just build good character at the end of the day. But it can also go the other way, right? So it could be like, it could actually break somebody as well. Like, that's the thing. It's a tough topic. I didn't actually expect to be talking about this today, but it's real, right?
I think it probably helped me have even more empathy
Right.
than maybe I do, or maybe I did at the time. And I think more recently as well, especially in sort of the last 5 or so years,
Mhm.
it's probably then led me to do a lot of self work.
Yeah.
And I like to think of myself as being very self-aware now.
Mhm.
So although I genuinely believe kind of everything happens just as it's meant to, not
Mhm.
necessarily for a reason, but in the moments when they can be really difficult and troubling, you're kind of just fighting through each day to then see the light one day. But in the future, when you look back on that moment and you realize that got you to where you are, it then all makes sense. So I think the bullying at school, although it was awful at the time and I hated being there and didn't want to go to school, like it
Mhm.
wasn't great, but actually it's made me the person I am today. And if I hadn't have had that experience, I'd be a different me now.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I just didn't know that. Like, obviously, because we spoke a couple of days ago, but I was, to me, like, trolling through it before this interview. I was just like, oh, okay, that was pretty cool. I think keep doing that. Like, kudos to you. Honestly, that's such a great thing to do, and especially when a lot of people are have little space for other people's problems these days. It's all about your own. It's amazing to see. Yeah, no, it really goes deep. So, um, you talk to me about your time in as an ERP super user. I know we're jumping super deep, and I feel like it's a completely different take now. But I don't even think it's a nice, appropriate next question. Should we ease in? Should we say something like, what are the things that you think? Because we're in this topic now. How do you think empathy plays in the current situation that we're in, and what are the things that you see that you wish you could change? I know that's such a crazy question that probably
I
I'm.
think relating it to, well, there's a couple of avenues I want to go down with this actually. So all although I don't volunteer with Shout anymore, I do volunteer in other ways currently. So one of the ways I do that, and I was actually with them all this morning, is through this initiative called Community Fit that's being created in Harrogate, where I live. Um, and basically every Wednesday evening, it's when you're available, so it's not a heavy commitment. Obviously, in the role that I have to travel quite a bit, so whenever I am around on a Wednesday evening, I go and meet at, we call it Community House,
Mhm.
and we then run, jog, walk within a 2 mile radius to we call them our partners, one of our partners nearby that need our support for an hour that evening. And this year, our numbers have quadrupled in size, which means where we used to be doing one task on a Wednesday night, sometimes now we can do two. And each one can have maybe up to 15, 20 people.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking, with a few dropouts maybe on the night, let's say minimum 10 people, that's 20 hours of free time and free work that our partners are getting. And it's seeing the impact that that has on them, because most of the people also working with at our partners are also in voluntary roles themselves, and they're just so grateful for the support and the help. And it can be really varied things. So I've done things such as cleaning the pews at a local church because we're in the build up to the carol service time and they want to make sure everything looks great for the people coming to listen, to helping at the schools in the summer holidays. We'll clear out the classrooms, repaint them. If they've got community gardens, we'll do gardening for them. We've dug ponds out. We've done tile cutting to make mosaics with Artisan International, who's another charity we work with. So a whole different varied sorts of things. So seeing that and having empathy for the people who really need our support and how it impacts them so positively is wonderful. Conversely, then, when I'm in an increasingly corporate working environment, I actually find that there is becoming to be more of a lack of empathy, which troubles me.
Oh yeah.
I think IFS has more than doubled since I joined 5.5 years ago. So there were about 3,000 people then. I think we're closer to 7,000 now. And when I first joined, it was a bit more of like the family feel, it was a really nice community, which it still has. A lot of those people are still there. And my colleagues are amazing, but I just noticed there's definitely a cultural shift that's happened to kind of take us to be one of the much bigger players within the software space. And coming with that, I have noticed that cultural shift means there is probably less empathy. It's more about let's grow, and do what we need to get there.
I'm gonna obviously share without naming, right? But obviously, I've been working in the IFS space for over 12 years. Through customers, partners. Um, I've seen an instance where this company I worked for grew, and it was family oriented, and could ring up very easily, like top management, um, and then the growth happened, and then suddenly it's just transformed into a different company. It's
Great for business.
great for business, but um, think it's essential, especially if you're just part of the cog, or you
Yeah.
feel like you're just part of the cog, and you're not really bothered about. Well, of course, you want your company to succeed. Who doesn't? But at the end of the day, that is just you just feel like you are being just shifted along, and I mean that's I'm just talking from a personal experience. Um, on that end of the front. So that could be a tough balance. But this is probably a nice prod to whoever might be watching to just, I think people are. It's such a fine. We could go for so many different topics here, culture and stuff, but you can just see the mood of the people that's in there, right? Like in the room, you can read the room, and companies could chase numbers, but at the end of the day, what are your people saying if you keep your ears to the ground, and are you taking care of um that side of things, because and is it a department's role? Not really. I think it obviously everyone chips in. People could say it's HR's job, but man, I just, like I said, I think recently I've had a lot of realizations about resource, um what even is a role when you get hired to do something but suddenly could change, or like, do you know what I mean? I think it's just there's a lot of factors here, but I think you've hit the nail right in the head. We need more empathy in the workplace. It's not just a place that you could turn up and do something. It's actually you spend a lot of your life on, like, it's
Exactly. On average, it's something like if you take sleep out of it, I still think it's something like 45 years worth solidly that we'll be working. You may as well find something that gives you fulfillment and that you enjoy. And I think the first joining IFS and it feeling much more of a family place, you naturally got that fulfillment from it, just from the relationships that you built with colleagues. I mean, it was pre-COVID, so we were traveling a bit more then. Whereas now, although at IFS, those people, the fantastic people do still remain, and it is still possible to find that. I think you just have to seek it out a bit more. It's not as readily available because people are chasing the numbers. And it almost feels as though, as you've kind of said, as the company grows, you become just more a cog in the bigger machine rather than being a key lever or a key role in it.
Yeah. Wow, I just need to take a step back because obviously that's that's like um yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot there working for a family company to a big company.
Yeah, I
And
mean, both have their pros and cons. This is obviously we're speaking specifically around empathy in this aspect, but yeah, it depends. I guess what you have to look at what your personal goals are, and if you're happy remaining in that environment, or if it's time for a change.
because there are some instances where companies go, right, we need to knuckle down and shed the old and knuckle down for, as you said, growth of numbers, money, or just a shift in the pace or the productivity, whatever it is. But it's almost like you have to sit your team down and be like, okay, this is what we're gonna go through. I'm here for you, but you have to buckle up, basically, not just have it happen to you and subtly happen to you and you don't know what's going on. I think that's the worst part.
We set those expectations,
Mm,
which,
yeah,
funnily enough, is something that I ask the salespeople to do with our prospects all the time.
yeah, no, I mean that definitely a good segue. But I actually wanted to step a little bit back. It's like when you've done your, how do you feel like it's shifting from being engineering to more like working with tech? And do you think tech has a lot to contribute in that? And what made you fall in love being a super user, ultimately going into IFS? I know
Mhm.
that's a big question in itself, but yeah, talk to me your thought process on that and your experience.
I think when I was in my second year of uni, that's summer holidays, the first time that I went to Fort Vale when I did a bit of a 2-week internship. And basically I spent the first week going around a whole host of different departments. And then the second week was more of a focus, and I was just in design. Because being an engineer, I assumed, oh, I'll be on, the CAD drawer all day and creating these amazing designs for the products we're going to make.
Mhm.
But actually, in that, literally all it took was a week. I realized that that role wasn't quite the best fit for me.
Mhm.
And it was mainly because, as lovely as the team were and are, you could hear a pin drop in that office. It was quiet. And I was like, I need a bit more noise. I need a bit
Personal,
more
yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. You need more action in your life. Like,
A
yeah, yeah,
little bit, a little bit.
yeah.
So the following year when I graduated, I did say, can I come back, please? I want to go traveling, and before that, I'd like to earn a bit of money. Would you have me?
Yeah.
Luckily, they said yes. And yeah, I ended up then going into the maintenance team, built some confidence, got to know a lot of the guys, had a blast on the shop floor. I absolutely loved it. Went off traveling, came back, and literally had been back, I think, less than a week. And one of the HR ladies who'd friended me on Facebook before I went away saw that I was back, and she was like, Sophie, when are you coming back to Fort Vale? I was like, oh God, I wanted a bit more time first, but cool, we'll have a chat.
Mhm.
Um, and I basically said at that time, although design is probably the direction I should go in, I need a bit more human interaction. So ended up moving into the sales team, which then kind of, I guess, stemmed into me chatting with customers on the phone, building that rapport, building those relationships. Um, then yeah, the ERP project came along, and I ended up taking on the whole sales piece, the shipping piece, and
Mhm.
the CRM piece.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Shout out.
and yeah, so
Let's
CRM,
go.
CRM's
Let's
my
go.
baby. I
It's mine
love it.
too. Mine too. Mine too.
Uh, and yeah, so then once I kind
This is
of
IFS, right? IFS. This is an IFS.
IFS was selected, yeah, as the ERP.
Mhm.
So I was doing then a lot of work as a super user with the consultants, and I was learning about their role, just because naturally when you spend 18 months every week with someone. You build a good relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thought of traveling for work had always appealed to me, and it didn't look like it was going to be coming anytime soon at the role in Fort Vale. So yeah, I made the decision to jump across
Mm-hmm.
to IFS into consulting, CRM consultant initially.
Mm-hmm.
Then, because obviously I'd
So,
done the
so
sales and the shipping, I then branched out more into the rest of supply chain and a couple of other bits and pieces.
mhm.
Yeah, so then 3 years doing implementations before moving across to pre-sales.
That's a good breadth of experience because you literally were on the floor, you were with the creative team, you've almost like hopped into different departments.
I like to put my hand up for things. If there's an opportunity, I'm like, yeah, I'll have a go.
No, true, true. But how did you handle rejection in sales? I guess that's the biggest thing in sales, right? It's like, I mean, I can't imagine you being rejected, Sophie, but I'm sure you do get rejected.
I
But
think I was I was probably quite fortunate really in the role that I had there, because it was more of an account management role than
right,
like your classic
and cold calling. Yeah.
BDR sales. Yeah, I didn't really have to cold call. We did do a little exercise of it once,
Mm.
and I hated it, but I was still
Oh
very
man,
keen into the role.
exactly.
So
Yeah, I just
steep learning curve.
yeah, yeah. I mean, shout out to the actual salespeople that do cold calling. Oh my
Yeah,
god, you need something, right? You need something to be able to
yeah,
get through
yeah,
that. Like,
100%.
and the thing is, like, I'm sure you had people trying to upsell your mobile phone contract call you,
Yes.
and you can just feel that their souls are about to die because you're about to do the same to them, and it's tough, isn't it? Like, yeah. Sorry, I digress. That's a good wealth of um different experience from being in the shop floor to the engineering team, and then going on to the full end of the other side with the sales team. But I'd
I
imagine
just fell into it, I guess. Just I fell into tech. Like when I was at school, the job that I do now, I didn't even know it existed. So I
Mhm.
think it's just naturally fallen that way.
Yeah, but tech is a well, without goes without saying, it's crazy big. Like, I remember I was at uni, and I know that tech is the way. Like, so I was doing business management, and I was like, well, there is no other industry. Like, it has to be something to do with tech. I fell into like IFS doing support, but to start the role with, but I knew it was a big deal. I didn't know I had to buy Bitcoin then, though. That's the thing that I wish I didn't.
Hindsight's 2020.
Hey, but that's why I'm doing digital collecting right now. So the comic books that are physical are moving. DC's looking to move it digitally. So as you see,
Mm.
that's the thing at the back. That's actually the cover art of an original comic that we helped build together. There's a digital version of that, and there's also a hybrid version of digital and physical comic out that's on the blockchain. So I think it's just one of those things where now I know I need to go in like niche, right? Into, because it could be big, it could not be big, but for DC, which is such a big brand, Warner Brothers, they see the potential in that. Um, so it might be my Bitcoin. Check back in 10 years. Who knows? No, that's a funny one. Okay, so no, that's pretty cool. Like I said, I think it's equipped you to be able to speak to anybody, like to overcome those objections as you need. But I guess it leads us on, like, what are oh, maybe we're jumping. Okay, let before we go there, should I ask you, like, what's your favorite parts about being a super user, and what do you think, how do you think people that okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I want to build some super users in the company I'm working for right now. What are the takeaway advice that you would give me to be able to overcome those objections? And I know that usually an implementation will prompt the creation of these super users, but I'm in a post go live cloud IFS cloud situation right now, and I need to build some of these again from scratch. What to you has the consultant that you're in done that's helped you go in there, or has it been a lot of your own initiative? Talk to me about your time as a super user.
Yeah, I think the thing that made it not the easiest, but it was almost like a necessary evil, is that I had to be 100% a super user. We tried at the start of the implementation,
50-50.
IFS came in and said, your super users need to be 100% on this project. And Fort Vale went, yeah, sure, whatever. Probably 50-50. And it became apparent very, very quickly the actual amount of work that was going to be required to get a whole new ERP system. And it's not a small undertaking, it's huge. We were a relatively small team compared to the size of the company. So I said, I need to be on this full time. And we did it. And that really helped because I had the weekly workshops initially so I could learn the system, but I was kind of learning the out of the box processes. I was then weighing up our internal processes and working out where can we make changes. Do we need to change our internal process? Or in this instance, our internal process, it is what it is. We're going to have to change the system. So then there was a piece of work around kind of then weighing up the level of change that we could handle as a business. And yeah, in terms of dealing with the kind of the pushback, that was a bit of a challenge from the team. And I think it's because the system that we were using at the time had been in place for sort of 30 years, that I think IFS felt like a huge shift and a huge change and a huge jump from where we currently were. And, we're using mainframe screens. So you needed to just learn a few page codes to access it really quickly and everything was instantaneous. Whereas it meant, everything that everyone had ever known was suddenly going to change. And our everyone's job is busy, it's full on, and then trying to take on learning a whole new system alongside that, it's tough. So that was probably the biggest challenge. It was trying to help people feel comfortable about the fact that this was happening.
No, you're absolutely, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think that is pretty much what all my guests are telling me is you need that commitment from your super users, probably from the top down, to go, hey, you can't give this a 10% or 25% because
Got to be all in.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's during implementation, but I guess
it can be a big investment for the company as well. So, it's in their best interests to put the resource to the project to empower those super users to be able to make the decisions. Because that was a sticking point that we had, is that we basically had a bottleneck because it was decided that every decision we wanted to make as super users had to be signed off by a more senior member of staff, which then meant we had to justify sometimes up to 3 or 4 times why we were making a certain decision. That just obviously delayed the process. But what ended up happening was, even though at the start in this instance, IFS had said you need to be 100% committed, we then pushed back and were like, okay, well, it'll maybe be 50-50. Then when the timeline slipped, the company I was working for at the time didn't want to take responsibility for that. They felt it was IFS's fault.
oh god,
So that kind of comes into play a little bit, is that, when you're working with the likes of, when you're working with a software vendor, it's not their first rodeo. They've done it a few times. When they're not saying 100% effort just to make life difficult, it is for a reason.
Oh, you've touched on a lot of points there. I want to elaborate on a
Sorry.
couple. No.
A lot to take in.
No. I mean, for me, it's always like, let's blame IFS. IFS is that, or your consulting partner, or anyone else's fault but yourself. I think I have ERP in itself, not just IFS, but like if you scale this back to ERP, it really, like, you're buying this big investment. Let's not put it any lightly. It's a big investment to boost your business, and not just boost, sorry, like it's really like working hand in hand with your business, because information is power and it drives decision making, drives even invest, like, the way investors perceive you, everything down to the point of being in the shop floor, being in the main landing page would dictate your work for the day. Like, for, we're talking up to the operational level, or to the salespeople, like we've talked CRM level. Could, if you set up the CRM properly, which we'll get there, could actually be, it could forecast your demand, it could forecast everything. It could, it could go up to the nth level of your business, right? But then it's a balance. It's like every cog in that process needs to work, from the key user engagement from the customer
Yeah.
to the implementation partner, or to the software vendor, which is IFS.
Mm.
It's actually really, I've seen ERP and I've seen this post, like ERP is evolving, especially with AI now. And I think what we need to think about is like, it's this balance, right? It's it's hard to pinpoint, because it's such a shared collaborative experience.
It needs to be thought of more as a partnership.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, with IFS specifically, that is, we go in, and
Mhm.
that's what we're saying to the customers. We're entering into a partnership with you
Mhm.
because we want it to be mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
You succeed, we succeed. It goes hand in hand.
Mhm.
Not just that, but we want our customers to be successful, because if they like the product and they're an advocate, then that helps us share it with more people even further afield. So that is, yeah, I think what can end up happening sometimes, especially if maybe the implementation is not as smooth as everyone had hoped, is
Mhm.
then it becomes a bit of us versus you. But that's not the case. The consultants, when you go in, like I remember when I was in consulting, I'd go in and I'd say, like, we're in this together. I'm
Mhm.
not going to just leave you to your own devices. Like, we'll work through your processes. We'll figure out together what's best for your business. By the end of it, I knew how that business ran probably better than some of the actual team members, because it was a partnership. We're looking for that customer advocacy, because then it helps the customer have a better business, and it helps IFS have a better business.
Switching it up then, what drew you to a pre-sales role? And yeah, no, what's it like?
Funnily enough, I was consulting at one of our customers, had a session, and one of the pre-sales team came in to do a demo, and I was sat in on it because it kind of crossed over with some of the areas that I was covering. And the actual reason at the time, which sounds a bit silly now, but he had better kit than I had. And I was like, hang on a minute, how do these pre-sales guys get all this great stuff? Yeah, so literally
Oh.
I kind of saw like this nice piece of kit, and being an engineer, being into tech, I was like, I want a piece of that. So I kind of set my intention that I didn't know when it would be, but I knew my next step after consulting would be in pre-sales. Funnily enough, the opportunity arose sort of 2 years later, but I felt that I wasn't quite ready then. I didn't feel like I'd built enough of the knowledge that I wanted of IFS. And I was still, I guess, working on my self-confidence too, which has come on leaps and bounds in the last few years. But even up until that point, I remember starting my first day in consulting, I was so nervous to go and talk in front of this room of customers, because I felt, oh my God, they're going to know when I have knowledge gaps and all that kind of thing. But that wasn't the case. It was fine. But yeah, it was the kit. It was the tech kit. I was like, I want to be in pre-sales.
I'm not gonna lie. That's the reason why I fell into become a CRM consultant, because um, the IFS CRM consultant came in with this like really nice car, and
It's probably the same person that I'm talking about.
I think so, but let's let's bank that. But that person, I don't want to blow up that person's ego a bit too much. Um,
They'll know if they watch it.
yeah, but I was just like, I want this life. I want to be traveling. I want multiple customers. I want
Yeah.
the experience. I want to see how far I could take a function. You know, like ultimately.
Yeah.
Uh, but I digress. I mean, what are your common objections when a customer selects an ERP? What are the things that, if we go to an industry, and maybe you could give me a few examples, and then what do you do to overcome that, and maybe afterwards let's talk about why do you think a pre-sales role is more important in a partner, or why, or do you think that why do you think a lot of people just go, okay, IFS, you do pre-sales? I know there's a lot there, but like maybe one at a time, whatever you want to go to.
I think I'll start on the pre-sales bit just because we're kind of talking about it at the minute anyway. I think that I guess another reason why I ended up wanting to go into pre-sales, although initially it was the tech and it was the kit that I saw that appealed to me. After 3 years doing consulting, I almost felt like I'd learned as much as I could in that role for my own personal development. I was ready for a change. I needed
Mm, new.
something else, something that was going to challenge me again.
Mhm, mhm.
And an opportunity arose to join the pre-sales team kind of at that time. Well, it happened initially when I wasn't ready, and then when I felt I was ready, I just kind of said, is that role still open? Can I still move across?
Yeah.
And the role at that point then meant that I could work across many more customers and prospects simultaneously. I had almost like a greater feed into our R&D as well, because I was seeing the common issues that our
Mhm.
prospects and customers were coming across.
We'll talk
So
about
I
that.
could then, funnel that straight into R&D. Whereas when you're in consulting, when you're doing the implementation, although you do still have that channel into R&D and you're on the ground and you're talking through those issues at that time,
Yeah.
almost with pre-sales, because we'll join the sales cycle and it can be up to sort of 18 months, even 2 years long. The product can change and update so much in that time. So if we start to get the same request coming up again and again from these prospects,
Hmm.
we can then filter that into R&D. So by the time they're going live, the likelihood is that functionality will be in place.
Hmm.
I think when it comes to a lot of the objections that we get as part of pre-sales and how IFS compares to other systems
Yeah.
is the fact that because as pre-sales we each have our functional strengths. So
Yeah.
mine are more around supply chain, for example. So
Mhm.
I'll go in to talk to head of procurement
Mhm.
at a company, and it may be that they have seen a best of breed
Mhm.
procurement software.
Yeah.
So straight away I'm kind of challenged in that although IFS has fantastic capabilities in procurement,
Mhm.
there are certain areas which maybe aren't as strong as a best of breed specific procurement piece of software.
Mhm.
One that I can think of off the top of my head is around contract management, specifically when we're talking about the documentation. It's coming on and it's improving all the time in our current software, but we don't have like the saved phrases ready to go, drag and drop. We can't like index against certain terms and conditions to then pop a flag up if you enter a line that goes against it. It's not to say it won't be there in the future, but today that level of detail isn't.
Mhm.
However, what IFS does have, because it's a full end-to-end ERP and it's one single product, we're not having multiple different systems bolted together.
Mhm.
It means that if I enter a purchase order, I'm using the same SKU codes or the same information that then would also feed into the likes of our work orders.
Right.
So So you could basically then look right back up the chain from the work order to see a component that was fitted to an asset, and I can see the purchase order that it came in from. I can see the date that happened. I can see who transacted it if I need to. I can see the costs associated with it. And I can also see every other inventory transactional move to get it to that point with their costs associated with those time and date stamps. So it literally gives you the full picture. Same with the finance piece, because that's all within IFS as well. All your product costings, all your roll-ups, like everything is in one system. So although I might find it a little bit more difficult when I need to look up contract information, the fact that having IFS means people in finance, procurement, maintenance, service, whatever it might be, have a bigger portion of their lives made easier. Like looking at it as a whole picture, that's kind of where we come into our own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that that's an ERP in itself, isn't it? It's having the system talk to each other, and especially if you get good reporting consultants or internal development staff that would really be in tune with the reporting aspect and the like the configuration aspect. You can really even go to town with what do you like so much about this best of breed, and do you know what, we can potentially even recreate that or even exceed that through lobbies or
It's also, it always makes me laugh though a little bit because, and I've said this to colleagues in the past and they kind of hate me for it, but I'm going to say it anyway. We go into all these various different types of businesses, different industries, but if you kind of break it down to the base, everyone's doing the exact same thing. They're all designing a product, they're buying components in, potentially, if we're talking manufacturing, it could be services still, but, they're procuring stuff, they're making a product or something that they are then either selling or servicing, whether that's in the form of a project or whatever it is, and then there's going to be the ongoing customer service. There may be a marketing part of it as well. Every business is doing that in some way, shape or form. Yet we go into these companies and they're like, yeah, but I want to report it in this exact way. And I'm like, I understand. But, we'll look at kind of best practice. How can we make it easy to do that entire flow? And sometimes I would actually, where possible, push back and challenge, because often that reporting requirement comes from higher up the chain. And I'm like, the chances are that person has not just come up with that reporting requirement off their own back. It's usually through something they've read or a similar report that they've seen, or maybe it's from another company they've moved across and they're used to seeing the information displayed in a certain way. But again, when you then break that down, the way that that information is displayed or the information that they want to get out of it, often it can be an acronym that someone has created to make themselves money because that's their product that they're selling. And it just happens to be that this end user or this, senior management person has bought into that way of digesting that data. But actually it's just information being displayed to them in a way that they're happy with. And IFS out the box, we've got over 200 dashboards, lobbies that you just get.
Tweak it
chances are people want to change it or tweak it based on how they want to see the information, but actually what makes one way seeing information better than another. So again, part of that consulting piece is pushing back and challenging where possible, because you get the best out of your ERP if you keep it as close to vanilla or out of the box as you can.
There is a lot there, Sophie, to unpack. But that's fine. I love that. I think great points on buying decisions, on competitor systems that complement the ERP or goes against directly in ERP. I've seen some internal systems where, why did you buy that? IFS does exactly the same thing, even more, and actually you don't have to spend X amount of money subscription a year just to try and also extra work just to try and go migrate the data from IFS to that system, where actually you could just use IFS system. Okay, you might not like the look of it, but it does the same thing. So I completely empathize with that point, for
I
sure.
wonder a little bit whether that's almost a societal thing as well. I think we're really great at being consumers. I think we're really great at buying things.
Mhm.
I think we're maybe not as good at investigating what we already see in our house. Oh, I've seen an advert for something that looks great and shiny. I'd really like it. But
Mhm.
actually, do we already have the bits in the house that we currently live in? Could we put them together? Could we make something that would do the same job?
Yeah,
People
yeah.
don't want to go to that effort. They'd rather just go and buy something because it's easier.
Mhm.
And I wonder if sometimes that plays a part when that exact thing happens. Like you say, oh, a team's just gone and procured a new system, and then they speak to someone and they say, well, hang on a minute, the ERP already does that. But
Yeah,
no one did the investigative work to know it, to
that's
figure it out.
so tough. Like I said, um, that comes from a personal level. I mean, I know it's only work, but the shit's personal, Sophie. This is this
Oh
is
yeah.
this is what we go through.
I've been there, I get it.
Um, okay, let's switch this up a bit. What are the most common challenges that you face in your current role and subsequently like your career?
I think in the current role, the challenge is it's probably when I was in consulting, I was working on the same projects for a good length of time. So you really get to know the people, you really get to know the business. I think in pre-sales, it's a lot more fast-paced. It's a different kind of pressure, usually more of a time pressure.
Mhm.
And often, depending on how many things you're working on, sometimes the solutions can kind of blur together a little bit.
Mhm.
And I'll have an AE ring me up about a demo or follow up of a demo that happened a couple of weeks before. And I'm like, you're going to have to remind me. I'm really sorry. What is it that this customer does again? Because I'm almost like, I've done a demo, right? Forget about it, clear my brain, on
Mhm.
to the next one.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, yeah, in consulting, you're spending so much more time kind of really
Immersed,
knowing in depth.
immersed, yeah.
Yeah, immersing yourself.
Almost, um, what's the word? Going native sometimes when you feel like you actually work for that company, but then you have to pull
Yes.
back and go, actually, no, 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 you don't work for that company.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
consultant. Yeah, but please go ahead, continue.
Yeah. And then I think in pre-sales, I really enjoy it because it is fast paced and because I get so much exposure to different businesses, how they operate, how they work. But I think, yeah, keeping it all in my head because there seems to be so much more information is difficult. And um it's actually can be some of the logistics and like making sure you can get to things and trying to balance how many demos you can actually do. And I think the salespeople probably hate me sometimes when I'm pushing back and I'm like, sorry, no, it's gonna be February now before I'm available. But
Sure, but
yeah,
it's quality over quantity as well sometimes, right?
yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I think we're leading up to the point where you wanted to stop, but I want to run through a couple more questions if that's okay. Um, do you think image is important, not just in tech, but just in general? I guess. Like, do you think that plays to your advantage?
I think that it has a place depending on a whole host of different things. Um, I think on a personal level, I like to make an effort. I like to have attention to detail.
Mhm.
I think by putting makeup on and doing my hair, it shows that I care and that I'm
Mhm.
conscientious.
Mhm.
I think that how you look can be a powerful tool when used in the right way as well. But I also think that sometimes it can mean people don't take you seriously
Mhm.
where you would like them to.
Mhm.
I think as a woman, especially in modern day society
Mhm.
and in a heavily male dominated industry,
Mhm.
it can be a double-edged sword sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, it's hard to know where to begin and where to end with this one. It kind of has its own little rabbit holes that can go off left and right. I think looking specifically at kind of like the pre-sales sales roles, you're front of house, you're representing the company.
Yeah.
And I think how you present yourself is important, because that's the first impression that the customers or prospects are going to get of you and of the products that you're selling. So in that sense, yes, I do think it's important. I think that in terms of once you've built a rapport and built a relationship, maybe less so. For instance, like I know full well with some of my colleagues, they all know me well enough now that they know how I operate, they know how I work, they know my personality. So if I was to rock up with my hair in a pineapple and a giant hoodie on, I don't think they'd care. That being said, I'd never present myself in that manner to a customer or prospect, because I want them to know that I'm serious and I'm confident in what I'm talking about and the product that I'm selling. And I want that to come across, not just in what I'm saying, but how I am visually to them as well, whether that's in person or through the screen.
So maybe we can stop there. There are things that I want to say that that would be really good for the next ones. Things like the push for women in tech, the Copilot, which I'd
Yeah.
love a demo of. We talk definitely deeper into IFS CRM or just CRM in general and its usage. I want to talk more about R&D as well. Like, how does that dynamic play out? So
Sure.
I guess that would be a good part too. Would you agree with that? Would
I
that be
would.
fair?
I would agree. I think we've got a lot more to delve into, definitely.
Sure. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts for this part?
I think I feel like it's been very focused on me, which is interestingly something that historically I would never have been that comfortable with. I think if you told me when I was at school as the shy kid in the corner that got bullied that I'd be having to speak into, in front of hundreds of people and do demonstrations and have that confidence to do so, I'd have thought you were crazy. So I think it's really interesting to sort of look back and reflect on career to date and the experiences that I've had and how they have led me to growing confidence. And yeah, it's been fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I feel like I've learned so much about you, but also your outlook in life, and I've learned such a how you're beautiful in and out, really, and how I wish you luck in what you do, but also I really have a deep respect for the attention to detail and the thought that you bring across to the work you do and for the ecosystem. And I really look forward to the next one and to maybe throw you some questions that I might face in the company I work for. So it's great to meet you, and I feel thoroughly blessed, and I'm sure the audience feels like they have a deeper insight, not just into IFS, but to yourself, and just adds to that dynamic in the ecosystem, which is great. Just the ERP in general, what ERPs are trying to do, and the people that are in there. So I'm really looking forward to the part two, and hopefully sooner rather than later, because I know you're very busy. But thank you so much for today, Sophie.
You really appreciate it. Thank you.
Looking forward to the next one. Bye.
Bye.